Well, I want to welcome everyone to, gosh, what number is this, Kelsey? Do you know how many of these we've done?
Oh,
Probably
I've lost
15 or
track.
20, probably.
Well, one a month for 2 years, so I would say we're getting in the 20s and 30s at this point.
Very good. Oh, welcome, Debbie from Paris, France, and a first timer, Heidi from Louisville. Excellent. Well, I'm your host today, Judy Judson. I'm going to be the moderator for the panel, and Kelsey is our executive director. And as we get started, as we wait for a few more people to come on board, we'll tell you a little bit about how things are going to work and also a little bit about warp if you're not familiar with it. What I like to do is have the presenters go first, and each one is going to speak for about 10 minutes, and then we'll have questions and discussion. If you have a question that you want to make sure you don't forget, go ahead and type it in the chat, and I'll keep track that way, and we'll bring your question up once we get to the discussion time. If you have a question that's specific to something the presenter just said, go ahead and type it in the chat, and I'll interrupt them and ask that question. One other thing I want to mention today, one of our presenters, Hanga, lives in Japan, and she's pre-recorded her presentation because it's 2 a.m. there, right, Hanga? She wasn't sure she would be totally awake and sharp. So we're going to show her pre-recorded presentation first, but she's going to stick around and be part of the question and discussion time. Kelsey, would you say a few words about warp before we get started?
Sure, absolutely. Thank you, Judy. So welcome everyone. I'm Kelsey Wiskirkin. I'm Warp's Executive Director. I'm going to just briefly screen share the Warp website here for those of you who have not been with us on a program before. Warp is an international textile networking organization, and one of our programs is this monthly panel discussion. Continuing Textile Traditions is the series. And so I just want to share that here you can learn more about WARP at weavearealpeace.org. And if you'd like to see other upcoming events under the events tab, you can check out those upcoming events here. This is our last program of the year, and soon we will have all of our monthly events posted for 2023. You can also click on the tab below that previous event, and you can see the recordings for all of our programs from previous months. So I invite you to check that out. And if you'd like to learn more about WARP and what a WARP membership involves, here under the membership tab, you can learn more about our organization. So thank you all for being here today, and thank you, Judy, for hosting, and I'll turn it back over to you.
All right, very good. So we have three presenters today. This is a very international panel. We have Hanga Yoshihara Horvath, who will be the first speaker. She's an embroidery artist who lives in Tokushima, originally from Hungary. Then we'll have Gasali Adeyemo, who was born in Nigeria and now lives in Santa Fe. And final presenter is Ignacio. I will do a terrible job on his name. Ignacio, who's a Mexican artist and lives in the state of Tlaxcala. Okay, so first we'll have Hanga, and as I mentioned earlier, her presentation was pre-recorded, but she's here. Why don't you give a wave, Hanga, just so everyone knows you're here. Yeah, Hanga's with us, but she's going to be watching along with us to see how her daytime self did a great job on her presentation.
Hello everybody, I will speak about Japanese indigo dyeing and my work. My name is Yoshihara Horvath Hanga. In Japanese order, in English is Hanga Yoshihara Horvath. I was born in Hungary and I studied textile art, knitting, in Hungary, Moholi Nagy Design University, and this is my final collection. That time I used chemical dyes. A few years later, I made my final exhibition in doctorate course called Zen Zen, and then I used natural plant dyes and also chemically reducted indigo first time. A part of my thesis was comparing the blue dyeing tradition of Japan and Hungary. So before I came to Japan, I went to all around the museum and the factories that's still working in Hungary, factory or studio. There is the hand block printing tradition. They use very nice wood blocks for printing, and sometimes they use natural indigo too. But even if we say natural indigo, they use imported indigo powder from India, and they use chemical reduction, not fermentation, and they use quite strong chemicals. Because of the price and also the chemical development, generally they use chemical blue dye in Dansrain and iron sulfate for reduction. They make natural indigo only for demand, for special orders. For example, sometimes for the traditional clothes, folk dance, for example. This is a picture from the Blue Dye Museum, Papa, in Hungary. Traditionally, they made blue and white printed fabrics, but in old times, they used other strong chemicals, and these dye other color, dyeing other colors, chrome and other strong chemicals were used. I love very much this pattern tradition of the Hungarian blue dye, but I was searching for something more natural. So that's why I came to Japan to learn the fermentation method. What I was interested about Japanese indigo is that it's grown and processed locally. I really love the idea that you take a very small seed. The indigo seed is really, really very small, and you just put in the soil, and you can just harvest yourself from your garden. And in Tokushima, in Japan, the major method is the composted leaf method, the sukumo method, but there is also possibility to make the indigo precipitate at home or anywhere. And I also was called by indigo because I'm coming from a natural plant dyeing world, and everybody knows that using plant dyes, wool and silk are easy to dye, strong and color fast color, but with cotton and plant fibers, it's a little difficult. And I saw that sashiko and koginzashi, very simple and very contrasted textiles with like a dark background and only white thread with very straight lines. And this simplicity and this strength of the indigo and the cotton and the rami and linen caught my attention. I really wanted to learn this. And I also love the idea that cotton and rami linen is cheaper than silk. So it's very suitable for everyday use, and it can be washed hard. So I came to Shikoku University with a scholarship and studied here for 3.5 years. And I brought you one of the recipes we use in the Indigo house. This big vat I'm stirring in the picture, it's about 270 liter. We put inside 20 kilograms of sukumo and 500 grams slaked lime and Japanese sake, almost 1 liter. Ash lye, we use quite a strong pH, near 12 or 13. And we mix this together with hot water, but not too hot, because if it's too hot, the fermentation stops. And we wait a few days. And when we see that the fermentation process is developing, then we put more slaked lime and bran. And when it's ready, we see on the top color and the way of the foam is forming on the top. Then we put in some slaked lime and ash lye again. This alkali and these nutrients can vary from stadio to stadio. And the maintenance is very important for the indigo because it's a living stuff. Here I show you with pictures how do we mix it. And this is the process of the fermentation. Here you can see the metallic color film appearing and the foam appearing when it's ready. This is the basic dyeing process of the indigo. I came to Japan in 2008 and was researching and working here. So all this indigo work were done in the Indigo house in Tokushima, but I presented in Indigo in my home university. So these are a few pictures I was taking while working. Even opening up, it's so magic. But you know if you do shibori. So at last I finished my long studies and I started my artist and teacher life in Tokushima as foreigner woman. Nowadays I do knitting and glue dye together. Since I do my own material, I can choose, and sometimes I dye in skein, and sometimes I dye in piece after I made the knitted fabric or cloth or wearable. And when I came to study here, of course, I was concentrating in indigo dyeing and shibori and katazome, the Japanese things. But after I finished and around, I saw that not anybody, but it's quite easy to dye with indigo, but it's difficult to find special, beautiful material. And then I remembered I learned knitting, and then I went back to knitting to make my original pieces and fabric for dye, because then I can choose my material. And being a foreign woman in Tokushima and an artist, I find a lot more difficult than being a teacher. I really feel like being a foreigner, it gives me strength as teaching. They are very curious about what I can teach. And I teach Hungarian embroidery. I teach the traditional colorways and the traditional techniques. but also sometimes teach Hungarian embroidery made in indigo, like Japanese and Hungarian culture mix. In these last years, I teach quite a lot in the community houses and kindergartens and special needs school. And I really feel at last I can find community life, because teaching embroidery, darning, naturally we always start to speak about our family, our traditions, and I get a lot of support from that woman, because I'm raising a child here in Japan, and I don't know school life and a lot of things, and I can ask my students. So I teach them, but they help me about Japanese life a lot. Thank you for listening. Here I wrote my Instagram and my blog and Facebook work, but if you go to my blog, last page take you to my YouTube channel where I show Hungarian embroidery.
Hanga, how do you spell indigo, or how do you say and spell indigo in Japanese?
We say I, and somebody wrote something like Awa Ai means Tokushima's indigo, because the old name for Tokushima is Awa.
Okay.
Ai is indigo, that also means meeting and love. But
Meeting and loud?
love.
Oh,
But
love.
it's a different character, but if you pronounce the same.
Oh, very good. Thank you. All right, so let's go to our second speaker next. And Gasali was born in Nigeria. He learned traditional arts from the Yoruba tribe, but as you will see, he's made it his own and taken it farther as an indigo artist, working and teaching in the U.S. And also, I see he's taught at Mendocino Art Center, John Campbell Folk School, and of course you teach in your own studio. So welcome, Gasali. We're happy to have such an esteemed artist and teacher with us today.
Oh, thank you. Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me to join this this event today. My name is Gasali. I'm from southwest of Nigeria. I'm Yoruba, and Indigo is my passion, and I always run to a lot of people of what I've been doing for when I was age of 15 years old as a young kid. I grew up in environment of the Muslim and tradition, which is they all need to do with relationship with natural dye. And indigo in my country, from Nigeria, indigo is a traditional dye in Nigeria, in my country. And also you have a lot of impact which is related to people always asking me like, oh, do you even have any dye, any other color in Nigeria? We do, because this indigo is not ordinary dye of what I grew up, because of growing up as a Muslim, also grew up as a tradition. Because my mother who raised me, she's a midwife, and my father was a healer. So indigo, the plant himself, that is why I see how he have a long history in my own community and in my own culture in Yoruba land, that indigo has been using to treat ourselves as a healing in the community where I grew up in Nigeria. And this is how everything was beginning. And how did you relate to the spiritual purpose? And what is the impact with spiritual? And what is need to do with kind of religion we worship in Africa? And I always say it publicly when I travel the global, this is only identity I have of me to kind of tell people where you're from because of the color, because of the blue and what we're wearing as a shade blue. He explained to the other tribe what tribe you belong to, and different tribe in the environment in my community have their own different story, which is the part of where I grew up in southwest of Nigeria. And my hometown is Ofatedo, which is around Osogbo. And a lot of things I wrote in Yoruba, you can see it in English, because that is why people drawn to my country, because there's a lot of indigo to be explained, to be seen. And that is Iyamapo Atiba, the statue. It come up to relate to the spiritual purpose as my mom and my grandparents, which is ninth generation. And I was very blessed. I was very lucky to grow up in that environment. That is why I like to show also my background.
Gasali, I want to interrupt you for a moment.
Go ahead.
Could you click in the bar that says from beginning? We're only seeing like a portion of your slide. It would be better to see it full size.
You see me now?
Yes.
We see your
Yes,
slide
that's great.
presentation. Yes.
You see the full screen, right?
Yes.
Okay, sorry about that. I don't know why he does that. So anyway, this is where I begin. Let me go back where, yeah. Can you see me right now?
Perfect.
Before, yeah, this is my journey.
Perfect.
How it relate to my life. My mother, she's the one in the middle of the screen, and then everything relate to after I exit from home to go study more about my knowledge. That is why in 1990 to 89, I joined the Nikkei Center for Art and Culture in Nigeria. So everything started from my early age when I was a young kid, because I spent a lot of time with my grandparents, and people always asking, is it indigo around the compound, or where do you even familiar to the indigo? Because adire cloth, which is related to the cassava, resist, is being around in 1900 in my country. When I was a young kid, I can see a lot of grandparents, they use the cloth when they wake up in the morning as a wrapper. So that give me the knowledge how long the indigo is being around my environment. And even with my grandparents, I was lucky to know my mother of my mom. So I always call it Aro Ibile. Whenever you say that, indigo is what we know, everybody call it, and in my language, and we call it Aro means dye, Ibile means traditional. So I set the record straight anywhere I've been in the global. I don't have indigo farm. There is a two different kind of indigo plants in my country. One is acting like indigo. The other one, when I grow up, it doesn't. It did act like indigo. That is the one you see on the screen. Indigo grow everywhere in my country. Right now, we are going to the dry season, and that is why also we call it the color of love, the color of medicine. The same plant, we use it, as I say, as a healing. It have a lot of impact in my community. So before we go to the fermentation of the dye, we use it as a fresh. Also, we have to get it to the compost before the fermentation relate from the little ball. You can see it on my screen. So that is what we break into pieces. But when we prepare the fresh indigo, people say, oh, why do you keep making it to little ball? Because they have a season. They always grow on the ground. So when the dry season come, before the rainy season, we don't have anything in the field. So we have to make sure we have them in the stock. And what is people always asking, what is your alkaline you use for fermentation? It's all about the wood ash from the cocoa shell. And that is where we get the wood ash. And then when we prepare the dye, which is the boar himself, we have to let it soak for at least for 5 days or for 4 days for fermentation. The reason why I like to sew this because when I just came back from Nigeria in September. I was there for 1 month. I always go around to see a lot of different culture in my environment because Ghana is not far from where I'm from. It's like, I would say like 9-10 hours drive across from Nigeria. So this is give me a lot of, because in my Southwest Nigeria, our dye vat, he stay on the surface. But people been to Nigeria, when they go to northern part of Nigeria, they can see some of the dye pot was buried on the ground. People say, oh, what is have to do? Because of the temperature situation is what I studied when I was in northern part of Nigeria to see all this. And this has been around the picture of old picture in the olden days, but I've seen it by my eyes, like the pot was buried on the ground. But in my area, everything stay in the surface. And this is the place I study, both in Osogbo and Abuja in Nigeria at the Nike Center for Art and Culture. So the dye, what is amazed me about the indigo, it's nothing really go waste on this, everything we use in the dye vat. Even when I teach classes all over the state, people see me collect my leftover dye in the vat, which is the leaf. I bring them home with me. People say, what are you gonna do with it? Because I gave it to the medicine man to use as a healing. And that is the beauty. How do you know your fermentation is accurate? How do you know your indigo is reactive? It's just the vibrant. When you put your fabric into it, the first thing you see is just a greenish. The same thing when you rub the fresh plant in your hand. That is why I call it chameleon. It oxidizes. People say, how long it stay in the dye vat? It doesn't make any difference. It have to go out and come back in. The more you put it back in, the more you see the shade blue changing. And this is how things alaro le reso, alaro le diso, como palaro. When you tie dye, when you hand paint with cassava, when you do batik, you still have to go to the indigo dyer. That is what I was trying to say in my language, Yoruba, the technique. And we all have a relationship. People always asking like, oh, is people do adire? Are they the one who die? Yes, you can find us in the same position. But growing up as a young kid, each people in the compound, it's like a trade. That is what I see when I was a young kid. My parent doesn't make this to make money. They do it to preserve the tradition, to keep traditional alive when I was a young kid. And I just saw my technique I use. This one is called batik. Batik is just hand painted, but we used to have a wood stamp, which is I grow up. But my teacher, Nikki, he's the one who invests about this sponge to use. And that is why when we call it, I call batik, it's my therapy. It's my meditation to express my feeling and tell the story about my life when I was a young kid. You can see people say, oh, what kind of color? We use the basic color and I use ordinary white also, but it's just all the design you see in the both pieces is not my improvise. It's a symbol. It's tell the story about what has been happening before I was born as a young kid in Nigeria. Adire eleko, which is cassava. This is what is really, really wake me up every day when I grew up as a young kid, because cassava is very highly food in my country. We make everything from cassava, tapioca, as a food. We use it to make bread, anything. And then my grandparents, they paint it as a resist to create a design. And that is why I like to show the processing when my sister was working, how to dry the cassava. Adire technique. And people always say, what is adire? Adi, are is between, like the way we say, we resist it and then we dye it, or we tie it with raffia or the grass. Hand painted is another one technique when I teach, and then the stencil and all those things. And in my left side, people say, what is the kind of tools you use? I use a chicken feather to apply as a design, and a small broom and a small knife to create the design. This is before. Adire, you only resist the top. It doesn't go through the back. The back is just solid blue. And you have to dry for 3 days before you put it in the dye vat. It can only be in the dye for 5 minutes because it was cooked as a paste. If it stay too long, it will just dissolve in the dye. You have to time it yourself. And this is my hand painted also. The one people say, what is okay mean? The other side, the right side, this is called Sumbebe. That is the name we call the design. Sometimes when you look at direct cloth, it's very symmetrical. It's very close to painting because it was very detailed. And this is what I use as a chicken feather, and small broom as a small knife. Each one of those tools create this design as a resist on the adire oniko, adire alabere, adi, are. Oniko means tie, alabere means stitching. And you can see also pigeon eyes, oju eyele, eyele ki bonile je, ko bonile mu. Because of my time today to tell this story, all the cloth we wear it for celebration, when somebody was going through tough time, or for naming ceremony, for wedding. Each design, it have the time we wear them. Eyele is a very loving bird. It's just when your life is good, they stick with you. When your life is kind of going the other direction, they don't leave you alone. They stay next to you. This is another method of my tie-dye technique. Tie, the top one and the middle one also is tie-dye. And then the bottom was a stitching. Adire, oniko, adire, alabere. They all dye with natural indigo in Nigeria. And cloth, as I said from beginning, we use it for celebration. And it's my identity. Even when I travel all over the globe, when I sit in the audience or when I was in the airport, people say, oh, how was Nigeria? The reason why they can identify me is because of my outfit. And that is why I call it my identification. He saw me where I belong to and where I come from, and also my dress code. You can see it on the screen. It's for celebration. So many celebration. The god of wind, the god of lightning, the god of iron, the god of water. We use blue, 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 because there's a relationship with arrow, indigo, and the god of water, which is how Iyamapo Atiba come alive to tell the story how indigo was beginning in my lifetime, in my country, in Nigeria. And my belief is indigos bring us together. And that is my website. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Gasali. That was terrific.
Oh, you're welcome.
You could stop sharing now. There we go. And we might take a couple of questions. Our third speaker is not here yet. but I think we could have some discussion now about what we've heard so far from Gasali and Hanga. Hanga told us that the Japanese word for indigo also meant love, and I think was it together, meeting? There's some similarity between what you just said, Gasali, about indigo is bringing people together, and Hanga's words in Japanese. I thought that was very interesting. Someone early on suggested we create a worldwide indigo network. Maybe this is the beginning. Maybe it starts here today. Wouldn't that be wonderful? Okay, so I have a question. How do you feel about people here in North America wearing your traditional indigo designs? Gasali, I think that's for you.
Oh, how do I feel?
Yeah.
Oh,
There's some people who are concerned about cultural appropriation. You know, that is.
I don't think I look it that way, because I thought all the people in this planet, and we all might not know where our creator began, but for our own knowledge, we can see. That is why when I visit Mexico City 15 years ago, I was in Coyoacan in Mexico. I went to Anthropology Museum. So that gave me pause. How human being, whenever the color, whenever tribe you belong to, I still believe we all connect. People always asking me, like, if I wear your traditional indigo, am I gonna look weird on it? I said, you're not gonna look funny. I think he bring you back to your basic of where your creator is kind of spread all over the globe. And that is why myself, I know my hometown is not where I was born in Nigeria, but where my creator was started. I was created as a human being. So that is how I see everybody who wear something like my work, indigo, from other part of the world. That is how I think, that's how I sense with it.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
We have another question about what are the medicinal uses of indigo? And maybe Hanga, can you speak to that one also? Are you aware of any medicinal uses of indigo? We can't hear you, although I see that you unmuted. Is your microphone on? There you go. Yes.
Okay. There are a lot of properties that are thought to have, like old people thought that the snake doesn't come near and things like that, but it's not proved. The proved one is that the dried leaves and the fresh leaves has a component that's good for eczema.
Oh, interesting. All right, very good.
And
Gasali, Gasali, do you have any comments about medicinal uses of indigo?
I think when I first begin my talk today, I say I grew up from the Muslim Arabic. When you call yourself Muslim, so it's, originally 100% Muslim. You still practice your tradition it's not under the rug, but behind the closed door. So that's why I begin with my mother and my father. Both of them rest in peace. So my brother right now, he follow my father's step in Nigeria as a healer. And that's what motivates me every day, because when I look at indigo, people see my dread. They say, wow, I love your indigo. You're so beautiful with your indigo heart. But what is in my mind is deeper than blue. It have a lot to do, as I said, with spiritual purpose. And I think I said in my talk just now, there's nothing go waste in the dye vat. After we finish the indigo, I say it earlier, I bring the the indigo stamp under my dye to give it to medicine man. The wig vat himself, It's a medicine. Any medicine man you visit in Nigeria, when you walk to their house, the first thing you see on the living room is the big bottle of blue wick indigo vat. Why? Because we grow up in the polygamy environment. So means a lot of envy, a lot of jealousy relate to, like, we try to hurt each other to put something in our food. It's just basic of killing each other. So when somebody do that to you, when you eat something you shouldn't eat, it went to your stomach. The first thing they can think of, they have to rush you to the medicine man. The first thing the medicine man look for is indigo wick vat. He have to let you open your mouth and take a little sip of spoon. It tastes like a plain yogurt, I would say. So when you drink that wick vat, in like 5 minutes, it settles your stomach.
Huh.
So can I add this little bit, if you don't mind?
Sure.
When I watched my mother as a young kid, because as I said, my mother was a midwife, indigo fabric himself, right here, indigo fabric. So I've seen my mom, when we have a little born child, like a 5-6 month old baby, sometimes you hold your baby in the morning, the way they're breathing, the way they respond is not normal. The first thing I see my mother do, he cut small piece of indigo fabric edge, and then he put them on the fire. So you have to create the smoke. So when he create the smoke, they have to make sure they put the baby face onto that smoke. After he inhale it to his lungs, you can hear the baby was coughing to relive. So that's another impact indigo was doing from the fabric, because we dye to the
Very
blue.
interesting. Thank you. Thank you for that story. Hanga, I have another question for you. Do you grow indigo yourself?
I grow indigo here in the garden, and also my husband is public servant in charge of the indigo varieties of Tokushima.
Oh, you've got the inside track, as they say. So
Yes,
what varieties grow well in Japan? What varieties of indigo?
We have here the knotweed, the dyer's knotweed, the Japanese
Dyer's knotweed.
Yeah, the Japanese indigo, but it has different varieties like red flower or white flower and red stem. And many people from many countries ask us which is best, but the best, the one that you can grow better. It depends how long is your daylight and the temperature, because even in the varieties there are some that reacts more with the light, the long length of the light, and there are other varieties that react more with the temperature. It also depends if you want to harvest once, twice, 3 times. It depends on the weather. But many people want to know the one that has more precursor of indigo. But as far as my husband researched, there are not much varieties. There are more difference how well do you grow your plant. So choose the one that easy to grow in your place and put nutrition, fertilization, and water. So
Very
it's like
good.
not best. There is not like one best variety.
All right, that's very good. One of those answers that we all questions we wonder about as we look through our catalogs in the winter to try to decide what tomato is best or what anything is best. It's what grows best in your country, or in your country and in your location. Has to do with the water and the sun particularly, as well as the soil. Okay, our third speaker is now on board. It's about 10 minutes until 2, so we may not have time for too many questions, but I'm very glad to be able to introduce you to Ignacio. I see Norma Schaefer was on earlier and corrected the presentation of his state and his name, but I'll just call him Ignacio for today. Kelsey, if you can locate him, and we'll put him on board to make his presentation. He's going to be speaking in Spanish, and one of our board members, Rocio, will be translating.
Wonderful. Okay, I think that Ignacio and Rocio are both here, so when they are ready to begin, we'll see them on the speaker view.
Hola, Rocío, que esto saluda.
Hola, Ignacio. Sí, por favor, si ya puedes comenzar. Hi, everybody. I will be helping with the
Les
translation.
voy a también su guía, bueno, pues sí, traduzco.
Yeah, he'll just start sharing the screen and then we can start.
Internet es algo lento. Bueno, yo quisiera platicarles acerca de lo que hacemos desde Contla, desde Tlaxcala, aquí en México. Contarles que el lugar donde yo vivo es frío. Entonces, para hacer fermentañil tiene ciertas consecuencias, ciertas complejidades. Sin embargo, el azul, yo soy un artesano, soy un artista textil que ama el azul. Estoy, pues, desde siempre relacionado con él porque a través de él me gusta expresarme.
Okay, déjame traduzco. Okay, so first of all, he wants to apologize because the internet signal is not very great. That's why, yeah, he was having trouble with that. But his name is Ignacio Nezahualcóyotl. That's a little bit of a hard last name, but I will write it down for you to know. So he comes from Contla. That's a community in Tlaxcala, Mexico. It's a state that you'll see the map later. And well, in this place, it's like a really cold weather. So sometimes that's difficult also for Indigo, but he's a textile artist and he has always loved blue. And he has always felt like a relationship with blue. So, Ignacio, no sé si puedas hacer grande tu presentación.
Gracias. Para mí, no la traigo, bueno, en este formato, no, a ver si puedo.
Okay, I asked him to make his
Ahí está.
larger, but
Sí, bueno, nosotros tenemos una relación en Tlaxcala con el añil desde tiempos prehispánicos. Tlaxcala es una zona donde hubo mucho intercambio comercial. Nosotros en el centro del país no tenemos índigo, lo traemos de Niltepec, Oaxaca, pero sin embargo el intercambio comercial desde tiempos prehispánicos nos ha permitido expresarnos con el azul. En la imagen vemos uno de los murales de Cacaxtla y en la otra parte de nuestra historia está relacionado con el azul y es el lienzo tlaxcalteca.
Okay. I'm just writing it down so I can make a translation. So he says that they have always been in touch with Indigo since ancient times, since pre-Hispanic and colonial times. So there has always been in this area like a commercial trading with other communities around, because there's no indigo in this part of the country because it's in a central part of Mexico. So they were always trading indigo with other communities, like for example, Niltepec, Oaxaca. That's where they do the extraction, the indigo extraction process. So they were trading with them. And well, for them, it was very important to express themselves with blue color. And there have always been different like murals and art made with indigo. For example, you can see on the left side, there's a mural that it's called, well, it's a mural from Cacaxtla. I will write that down because it's a very difficult name. And yeah, Cacaxtla. So you can see that, and you can see indigo there. So, sí, gracias.
Esta es en el país, aquí en México, nosotros estamos ubicados en el centro del país. Es un estado muy pequeño, es el más pequeño, de hecho, de México, pero tenemos mucha cultura, trabajamos muchas artesanías y muchos, pero muchos textiles. Nuestro textil principal, pues, es el sarape, que les voy a platicar cómo lo hacemos.
Okay, so here you can see the map. The red part, you can see the state, that's Tlaxcala state. And it's a really, really small state. Actually, it's the smallest one in Mexico. And there are a lot of crafts and textiles. And also they have like a really traditional garment that it's called sarape. I'm writing it down right now. Yeah, sarape. So he will explain a little bit more about this garment right now. Okay.
Nosotros trabajamos el añil a través de familia en familia. Aquí en Contla se va heredando como una forma de producción, como una forma de sustento para las familias. Se transmite la técnica a través de un concepto llamado la semilla, que podría decirse que es la madre que hereda a la siguiente generación, o transmitir de mamá a hija. Ahí el la semilla.
Okay. Okay, so he says that here you can see a picture of semilla. Semilla, that means seed. I'm writing it down. So it's for them, it's like a concept because they are just like passing this tradition from generation to generation. So this concept of the seed is more like a mother that inherits something to the next generation, like a mother to a daughter. And that's like how they like this concept of indigo and how they call them, how they call it. Listo.
Nosotros partimos de la cultura otomí, nosotros somos indígenas, yo soy indígena nahua, sin embargo nuestras técnicas de añil datan desde el tiempo prehispánico y bueno, los otomís tenían un acercamiento a la Sierra de Puebla, al Estado de México, por intercambio cultural a Oaxaca, y por eso es que nosotros trabajamos el añil con maíz, lo trabajamos con fermentos que se derivan del maíz. Todo esto por nuestra relación con los otomís.
Okay, so he comes from a Nahua tradition. Nahua is a Mexican community. So they had always been working with indigo, as I told you before, since pre-Hispanic times. And well, there was a question here that asked which states surround Tlaxcala. So he was also talking about this. There's Puebla, that's another state. There's Mexico and well, the state of Mexico, like Mexico City also, and Oaxaca. So those are like the surrounding states. And well, as they are in the center part of Mexico, they also work a lot with corn, and they have like a lot of fermentation corn traditions, and that's how they ferment indigo. Listo.
Y la cultura del teñido de añil se transmite de generación en generación en cada uno de los pueblos de México, y es el caso de mi comunidad de Contla. Aprendemos de los abuelos, aprendemos de nuestros abuelos, y nuestros papás nos enseñan a teñir para que tengamos una posibilidad de convivir o de ganar dinero para pues, poder comer, para pues, sobrevivir pues, en este mundo.
Okay. So he says that, well, they learned from their abuelos, from their grandparents, and they continue with this tradition, and this really helped them to survive in this world also. Yeah, to survive in this world and to have something to do to make a living. Listo.
Trabajamos con técnicas adaptadas en cada zona. Para nosotros como nahuas es bien importante el uso de las plantas que tienen un uso en lo tradicional, en lo medicinal y en lo ritualista. Las recetas o la receta que consideramos o que trabajamos es nahua, y se deriva de plantas que se dice que curan el alma, que curan la alfresía, le llamamos así, a una enfermedad que nos produce tristeza, y el estar trabajando y relacionados con las plantas para teñir añil nos da esa alegría o nos da esa estabilidad. Entonces se dice que para cuando teñimos, la alfresía se cura nuestra tristeza al teñir.
Okay. Okay, I'm coming. Okay, so he says that they work with different techniques because as he told us, he's using the Nawa technique that you can see the name on the picture. So they use different plants, especially medicinal and ritual and traditional plants. And they prepare this Nawa recipe with local plants. And normally they call these type of plants like plants that help you heal, like heal your soul. And they also heal your sadness. So when you get involved with these plants while you're preparing your indigo bath, these plants help you at the same times to achieve like harmony and also they help you heal sadness. Listo.
Para nosotros, como comunidad indígena, pues nos gusta transmitir pues lo que hacemos desde el pueblo, porque pues esa tradición es la que nos enseñaron y la que nos gustaría que pasara a otra generación. Utilizamos minerales de la región, quesquite, utilizamos fermentos, todo ello nos ayuda a producir zarapes.
Okay. Oh, wait, just a little bit. Sorry, I'm just trying to write everything down. Okay, so he comes from this indigenous community, and for him it's very important to pass all this knowledge from his people to all the world. So because this is what he learned from his abuelos, and also he wants to pass it to the next generation. So they work with different minerals from the region. For example, they work with the quesquite, that I will write the name down, that it's a mineral that they use there also. And they also use the fermentation, and they use also to make sarapes. Sarapes is like a shawl, like a big shawl that it was traditionally worn by men in Mexico. So they do a lot of sarapes there. You can see an example here. Listo.
Trabajamos los zarapes en telar de pedales. Para mí, a través del azul, expresar a través del añil es una forma de llegar a otros lados, a otras pues tradiciones, y que nos hermana con pues las demás tradiciones que hay aquí en México, en Tlaxcala y por supuesto en mi comunidad. Principalmente en el taller con el que trabajo son mujeres, porque hemos roto con un estigma que se dice que el trabajo de hacer zarapes, de telar de pedales, es solo para hombres. Entonces nosotros buscamos pues romper con ello y ser incluyentes.
Okay. So he says that as you can see on the picture before, he was working on a pedal loom to make sarapes. As I told you, the sarape is like this big shawl. So he loves to express himself with indigo, with blue color, and to be able to get to some other places in Mexico and around. So in his workshop, he works especially with women, because normally there was like an stigma, I don't know if that's the name in English, where only men could work on pedal looms. But now he's trying to stop this like belief, and now he's employing women in order to make these zarapes. Listo.
En la cultura textil de Contla hay una prenda que nos distingue, que es el zarape de Saltillo, es de las prendas más famosas en México. El uso del añil ha estado presente desde tiempos prehispánicos, tiempos coloniales, y propiamente como municipio hemos pasado muchas dificultades para mantener pues el zarape con técnica de Saltillo y propiamente los zarapes que vimos en las imágenes anteriores.
Okay. So he says that Well, the textile culture in Contla is the community that he's from. They make this sarape that it's called sarape de saltillo that you can see on the screen. And well, indigo has been used for a long time, but it has been difficult to continue with this tradition, especially in this town, because it's complicated to continue all these traditions and all these techniques. Listo.
Tratamos de adaptarnos a el tiempo contemporáneo, trabajamos distintas formas de tejido para alcanzar otros mercados, a otros públicos. Tratamos de cuidar mucho nuestras costumbres para llegar a esta época y bueno, tratamos de que tengamos una posibilidad de venta para pues seguir continuando y por eso trabajamos con textiles contemporáneos que nos han pedido llegar a otros espacios con otras mentes, con otro corazón y pues creemos que nos va a ir mandando poco a poco el trabajo. El añil creo que nos ha dado esta apertura para poder estar en otros espacios.
Okay, so they are trying to adapt themselves to more modern times. So they have been trying different weaving techniques to be able to get to other markets, to other targets. So they are trying to continue this. Yeah, they are trying to continue these traditions, but they also want to, I don't know, to expand themselves and be able to sell to other kind of people and other type of public. So they are making this, as you can see on the screen, these contemporary sarapes that really helps them sell in other parts of the world. So also Indigo has helped them a lot in that part. Listo.
Nos ha permitido estar en espacios en pasarela, nos ha permitido contribuir directamente con artistas y eso nos da posibilidades de seguir manteniendo nuestras tradiciones.
Okay, so, well, by doing this, they have been able to be in different spaces. They have even been doing some like fashion, like fashion. Sorry, I just forgot the name. Like fashion spaces, and then they also contributed with other artists, and this gave them also the possibility to expand themselves.
Creo firmemente que para que podamos continuar teniendo añil en mi comunidad, debemos de compartir, debemos de transmitir lo que sabemos. En el taller que dirijo en Contla, para mí es fundamental que los niños aprendan de nuestras costumbres, de nuestros tejidos y que disfruten, que sigan amando el añil tanto como yo lo amo.
Okay, so he says that to continue, of course, in order to continue with this tradition, they need to be able to share their knowledge with his community and also especially with children. So for him, it's very important to teach children how to weave and everything about these traditions and about indigo, so they can also love this dye. Listo.
Nosotros teñimos el añil porque es una forma de sentirnos orgullosos de quiénes somos y en mi caso, cada que tiño siento mucha alegría. Decía al principio que me ha curado la tristeza. Era una persona muy solitaria y bueno, a raíz de toda esta exploración del añil que ha sido pues durante toda mi vida he ido cambiando. Creo que el añil nos da esa posibilidad y creo que el azul pues que es el color que más amamos, pues nos da serenidad, nos da esa forma de convivir el pasado con el presente y por supuesto, como decía, para con los niños, dejar un antecedente y que ellos sigan disfrutando de pues este maravilloso tinte que para nosotros viene de tiempos prehispánicos.
Okay, wait. Okay, so he says that every time he dies, he feels like this joy. And for him, really, he can tell us as an experience for him that Indigo has helped him heal his sadness, because he used to be like a very lonely person, and he has been changing that. And he also thinks that he had this opportunity and this possibility because of Indigo. So nowadays he feels more like in harmony, and he thinks Indigo really helped him to make a link between the present and the past, and also being able to share this with the children so they can continue these traditions that for them they come from pre-Hispanic times. Yes. Listo.
Me gusta mucho compartir, me gusta pues compartir en la ciudad, pero también me gusta mucho trabajar con comunidades indígenas, donde pues somos un equipo donde todos teñimos, donde todos sentimos y bueno, queremos pues compartir para con la gente que podamos. Disfrutamos mucho de como indígenas que sepan que tenemos y queremos un espacio, pues como pueblo, como comunidad, como teñidores.
Okay, so he says that he really likes to share his work in the city, but he also likes to share this with indigenous communities and to really feel like that sense of community and of teamwork, because he really liked to share, and he also really liked to have a space for communities and especially for indigenous communities, and especially as weavers and dyers also, so they can share this with the rest of the world. Listo.
Bueno, me gustaría cerrar mi participación dándoles mi contacto. Yo soy un artista que disfruta mucho el azul. El añil me ha dado mucha posibilidad o oportunidad pues de pues transmitir lo que pensaban mis abuelos, lo que pensaban mis papás, y quisiera pues seguir en este campo. Y por supuesto agradecer la invitación. Muchas gracias por la paciencia pues, de esta presentación, porque no hablo inglés, pero bueno, espero que les haya gustado tanto como a mí.
Okay, so on the last screenshot, he will show you his contact, and he also wants you to know how much he enjoys Indigo and dyeing with Indigo. And he also wants to thank you for the patience, because he doesn't speak English. Also, thank you for your patience with me, because sometimes it's stressing to write everything down. So I hope you understood me correctly. So he hopes that you have enjoyed his presentation and his images and everything. So someone here asked me if I could spell his last name like very in a slow way. So it's called Nezahualcóyotl. That's a hard one, but yeah, Ignacio Nezahualcóyotl. And
es complicado mi apellido.
Sí, un poco. Es que me preguntaron si podía decirlo en forma lenta. Y also someone, just to finish, someone asked me what was the event that Norma was talking about here. It's an event called Original in Mexico City that is going on right now this weekend. So if you happen to be in Mexico City, I would highly recommend to go there, because it's a textile event. So lots of artisans from so many different parts of Mexico are here sharing their work, selling their textiles, and it's really, really amazing. I went there on Thursday, and he's here. Ignacio is there, so you can go visit him there. Listo. Muchas gracias.
Muchas gracias to both of you. Rocio, you've done a beautiful job.
La Socamati.
Thank you.
Beautiful job. And Ignacio, thank you so much for joining us. Gasali, Hanga, this has been a fabulous panel. We only wish we could go on for another hour or two, because there's so much to learn about Indigo. There were many technical questions that I didn't have time to ask today, but any of you who are interested, feel free to follow up with our speakers by email, and I'm sure they'd be happy to answer your questions and tell you more about their work as you've requested. Kelsey, before we sign off, do you want to tell us what's the next program? That would be in January, right?
Sure. Yes, this is our last program of this year, and our program we're working on for January will be actually quilt focused. So we'll have more on that soon, and we'll make sure that we send out an announcement email to everyone. And we will also have a follow-up email next week with the recording from today and the contact information for today's speakers. So we do encourage you to send questions and check out their websites, and we'll have all of that in next week's email. And thank you to Hanga, Gasali, and Ignacio. We really appreciate your time sharing about your incredible work with us today.
Yes, I truly feel like we're an international community after today's presentation. That was fabulous. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.